Welcome, true crime fans. This is episode 4 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ferguson, and with me is my co-host, Mike Gibson, aka Gibby. Gibby, what's going on?
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
It's good, man.
Yeah.
Going real good. So I've got to say, this is episode 4, but this is part 2 of the Dennis Rader BTK story. So if you have not listened to episode 3, you've got to stop right now. Stop everything you're doing. Stop the podcast. Go back, download episode 3, and start there. Got to do it. In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. We talked about last episode, Gibbs, overwhelmed by the support. The numbers the last 2 days dwarfed what we had last week. So it's just been unbelievable. I'm blown away. How many people are reaching out on social media. It's really starting to take off. And I just want to thank everybody who has downloaded and taken the time to listen to this show. I would ask, as I do every show, that you subscribe. And this time I'm going to add, if you're on iTunes, I've been talking to a lot of people and they do not know how to rate the show. Most people know how to subscribe, but a lot of people don't know how to rate. And you can do it right through your phone. If you go to the search, if you're in the podcast app and you go to the search button, type in True Crime All the Time, click on our podcast, you can write a review, give us a rating, and that's how you can do it right through your phone. But that helps us out, helps us get out to a broader audience. Tell your friends. Also, visit our website, truecrimeallthetime.com. If you click on that contact tab or contact page, you'll see everything. You'll see our Facebook page, follow us there. You'll see our Twitter, follow us there. We really want to get more social media interaction. While you're at the website, click through the Amazon banner. If you're doing any Amazon shopping, Amazon gives us a little love to the show. Doesn't cost you a thing, and it's an easy way to support the show without shelling out any dough. Before we get into where we left off last show, I want to give a shout out to a couple of people that did reached out through social media. So Brenda in Ohio, Annie in Texas, both reached out through the Facebook page, said some great things about the show. And then Melly on Twitter, I want to give her a shout out as well because she said some really nice things about the show. Gibbs, we were talking, we got a lot of stuff to get through. Dennis Rader, such an enigma. We got through 5 murders, but it's really 2 different incidents, right? So 4 murders, which were the Oteros, and 1 murder, which was Catherine Bright. So from there, we're picking up in October of 74. So this is about 9 months after the Otero murder, 6 months, give or take, after the Bright murder. The Wichita Eagle is the, I assume, the local paper there in Wichita. And there's an employee named Don Granger who gets an anonymous call. Caller directs him to the Wichita Public Library and gives Don a specific book to look for. So Granger goes to the library, finds the book, and inside the book is a letter claiming credit for the killings of the Otero family. And the letter also promises more victims. The police had no doubt that the letter was written by the killer because there was some details inside the letter that only the killer could have known. I thought it was is interesting, Gibbs, that obviously we're talking about Rader, right? We know the killer is Rader, but so Rader addresses the letter to the Secret Witness Program. I'm not sure what that is, but it was, I guess it was something that people could pass information to the police through the newspaper and remain anonymous. So he must have known about it, and that's who he addressed it to. One thing that police wanted is they asked the Wichita Eagle to not publish the contents of the letter, basically because they didn't want a whole bunch of people coming forward, and they didn't want a bunch of false confessions, which is something that would happen in a situation like that. The problem is that a reporter at a rival paper, the Wichita Sun, also received a copy of the letter and printed it in December. Obviously, the cat's out of the bag at that point. I did want to read a couple of the excerpts from the letter. And one thing, Gibby, and I want to talk about a little bit is we touched on it in the first episode a little bit. I find a lot of similarities between Dennis Rader and the Zodiac. And I know we haven't covered Zodiac. We probably will at some point. And I don't know how much you know about the Zodiac, but I've watched everything. I've read all the Grace Smith books, which some people say are bull, but there's just a lot of similarity between the two, because one thing that Rader does is he intentionally in these letters misspells a lot of words and has a lot of grammatical errors.
When were the dates of the Zodiac killer?
Yeah, so
when did that occur?
Zodiac started in the 60s. I did read somewhere in the research that I did on Rader that I don't think he ever admitted this, but there was an assumption that he was patterning himself somewhat after the Zodiac when it came to this communication. And there's going to be a lot more, right, that we're going to talk about.
But I think he probably did, because just even look, playing some of the confessions that you had on the first segment, he talks about, he uses the word serial killer quite frequently. This is what a serial killer does. But the only reason he would know that is because he's followed or researched some, for him to be able to say something like that, and for him to say things like his, as he's mentioned, the first two murders, talking about his hit kit and his, project list and things like that. So I do believe that, I don't know if it was a Zodiac, but he's definitely found somebody that he idolizes and is trying to be similar, but in his own sick and fantasy way.
Well, yeah. So what would be the reason for reaching out to the cops or the paper? There's only one reason. It's because you want to revel in taking credit for these heinous crimes that you've committed, right? If not, you just stay silent.
Sure, fame.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to get caught. Don't reach out to the cops.
He wants the notoriety, right? Fame, yeah.
Yeah. I want to read the letter. And to preface it, at this point, apparently there's 3 people that the police must have had in custody. They were looking at for the Otero murders, because he says, I write this letter to you for the sake of the taxpayer as well as your time. Those 3 dude you have in custody are just talking to get publicity for the Otero murders. They know nothing at all. I did it by myself with no one's help. There has been no talk either. Let's put this straight. There wasn't a lot of grammatical errors, but he left the S off of dudes, and I said it that way on purpose just to be authentic. But he goes on to provide details of the crimes and the crime scenes that nobody else could have known. And then he goes on to say, I'm sorry this happened to society. They are the ones who suffer the most. It hard to control myself. You probably call me psychotic with sexual perversion hang up. Well, no shit. He has a sexual perversion hang up. The letter didn't say that, but I added it. When this monster enter my brain, I will never know, but hear it to stay. How does one cure himself? If you ask for help, that you have killed 4 people, they will laugh or hit the panic button and call the cop. I can't stop it, so the monster goes on and hurt me as well as society. Society can be thankful that there are ways for people like me to relieve myself at time by daydreams of some victims being torture and being mine. It a big complicated game, my friend, of the monster play, putting victims number down, follow them, checking up on them, waiting in the dark, waiting. The pressure is great, and sometimes he run the game to his liking. Maybe you can stop him. I can't. He has already chosen his next victim or victims. I don't know who they are yet. The next day after I read the paper, I will know. But it too late. Good luck hunting. Yours, truly, guiltily. All right, that was a little hard to read just because of the errors, but I tried to read it as it was presented.
Grammar-wise, it's almost like I wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No.
Mike makes fun of my English grammar sometimes, folks.
Sometimes. Only while driving through Illinois.
Yeah. It's a great state, you know?
Yeah, the great state of Illinois.
Yeah, it's right next door to Illinois.
So the letter's unsigned, but it does contain a postscript. So I want to read that too. So it says, P.S. Since sex criminals do not change their M.O. or by nature cannot do so, I will not change mine. The code word for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them, BTK. You see, he added again. They will be on the next victim. So, Mike, we went through a whole episode talking about Dennis Rader, BTK, but we never did say what it stood for. And there was a reason for that because we never got to that point, right? We never got to that point in time. And it was this letter was the first time that the BTK was mentioned. And I think it's kind of strange that he gives it to him himself.
Yeah, he's developing his own calling card.
Some of the people that examined the letter or some of the things that were thought about the letter were that this person was probably, somewhat educated, and this was really a poor attempt at look like they had a bad grip on English, right? And they were trying to deceive or make themselves look much dumber than they really were. They, the analysis goes on to say, and you'll see this in Zodiac as well, because I've read a lot of the Zodiac letters. So Rader he has no problem with words like psychotic, perversion, complicated, but he can't spell some of really easy words. Zodiac, very similar in some of his letters where, he would have some of the more complicated words he'd have no problem with, but some of the easy ones he would misspell. And I think it's similar, done on purpose to try to confuse. So I think we get into October of 74, right? He made his last kill in April of 74, sends a letter in October of 74. Rader's next victim would not come until March 17th of 1977. So he takes a 3-year hiatus from killing. My question is why? What is he doing during this time? And how can he go 3 years without killing anyone and satisfying his, what we know to be sexual addiction that is attached to torture/murder? Gibby, what's your answer to that?
Well, I don't know. But, I mean, we know that he didn't, to the best of our knowledge, we know that nothing occurred during those periods of time because, one, there was no murders on record in that city that he liked to perform in. And we know that, here's somebody that likes to take credit. He wants the notoriety of it. And he's not, if there was something that he did, even if it was in a neighboring town, city, state, he's somebody that would have taken credit for it.
Well,
So,
because he does do that, right? At some point, he does try to take credit for murders that he didn't even do.
right. So, I mean, that's why I think if he actually did perform one, he would make sure people were aware of it.
I agree. I
So
agree.
I don't know what he was doing in
So,
this gap. How he fed that demon.
yeah.
You
So
know,
there's a couple of things we know. Number one, he's working at ADT during this whole period of time. We laid out his job history in the first episode. Number two, by his own admission, he never stopped trolling and stalking. So he's doing that during this 3 year period. The question is, why doesn't he act upon it? We don't know the answer, but we're posing the question. He, at this time, is attending Wichita State University. The other thing that his first child is born in 75. Those are some factors that could have played into it. You know,
and I kind of think the child being born, first child in '75, probably plays into it. Because
could be the
you
biggest
know
factor.
maybe it softens him up puts that demon on the back porch for a while. But
I think it could
as we
have.
know, it's a very short period of time before it comes to the forefront again.
Well, you and I both know what it's like to have your first child. Those first years are tough. Actually, it doesn't get that much easier, but
No, but
I think
also it's also probably the best feeling you ever have.
it is.
Having that
And you
you
might
know
you might be tapping into something
your
there.
first child.
Yeah, you might be tapping into something there where he was in a state of mind where he didn't feel maybe the urge wasn't as strong, maybe he could control it. I'm not sure. But I think it's interesting to bring up. I think it's interesting. A lot of serial killers, and this a 3 year period for him is actually kind of small because as we go on, we're going to see he's going to have a lot. He's going to have a lot longer periods of time. That is just not what I'm used to seeing with most serial killers. They can't go that long and put the demon, as he called it, at bay for that long of a period of time. But let's get to the next murder. It's March 17th, 1977, as we said. Rader decides, for whatever reason, that it's time for another murder. He's been trolling, and what I had read is he had been trolling one particular neighborhood pretty heavily, and he had several women in this neighborhood as projects. He had met a woman named Cheryl at a bar that he found quite interesting. And Cheryl happened to be renting a house with another woman, and they were having some parties back in those days. And once Rader found out where she lived, he decided that that was going to be his next project for sure. So Cheryl and her friends, they have these parties. Rader comes around, and fortunately for Cheryl and her friends, the day that Rader comes, they're not home. So Cheryl and I don't know Cheryl's last name because I never read it, but I have to believe she's one of the luckiest people ever.
Absolutely.
So Rader, he finds out nobody's home. He's trolling down the street, and he runs into this 5-year-old boy named Steve Relford. And Rader develops this ruse, and what he does is he pulls out a photo of his own wife and son, and he asks this little boy if he knows who they are.
Right. This is where he's playing his another fantasy role, right? Where he's
Yes.
pretending he's a private detective.
This guy's got a lot of fantasies, man.
Yeah. What he talks about, in a lot of his post murder interviews, he talks about how the fantasy is that he thinks, obviously this was random, but he thinks about the person He lies in bed at night. He thinks about it. He thinks about what he's going to do, how he's going to do it from beginning to end. And he goes over it and over again every night until finally decides to make it reality. In this case, here he is. He decides, he's going to go out that day and he's going to be a private detective. Like you said, he runs into this 5-year-old boy and he whips out some photos and he starts his charade and kind of goes from there.
These next 5 murders, because of time, we won't go into too many details because we're going to hear Rader talk about them, right? I've got Rader in his own words talking about them.
Right.
But in a nutshell, he follows this kid home, knocks on the door, as you said, posing as like some type of detective person, and the kid lets him in the house, probably thinking this is an authority figure, I need to listen to him. And there were 3 children in the home altogether. Rader turns off the TV, lowers the blinds, and this is when Shirley Vian, the mother, comes into the room. She's in her bathrobe, and she wants to know what the hell's going on. So Rader's got his hit kit. With the hit kit, he's got a gun, so he uses the gun as he did, with the Oteros to control the situation. But in this one is a little different because, Mike, from what I read, he made his intentions pretty clear right from the beginning to Shirley. So Shirley's 24 years old, and he makes his intentions pretty clear that he's going to bind her and have his way with her right up front.
He says, basically, get undressed. I'm going to tie you up. I have sexual fantasies. Of course, I think she says something like, it's all right if I use the restroom first. Basically, she acts like, okay, let's get this over with.
What's strange is he doesn't rape her. He tells her he's going to, but he doesn't. And she ends up throwing up at some point, and he gives her a smoke and he gets her a glass of water.
Yeah, is this the one where he always talks about how his victims are upset or not feeling good, and he tries to comfort them. I mean, that's just really sick.
Right.
I mean, it really is. I mean, it's.
Remember when we played the Otero sound bite, he talks about, I tried to comfort the father by putting a pillow under him. He goes out of his way to act like he's helping these people.
And that's how he acts, with this Shirley Vian and others. Is like he's giving them comfort, that he actually believes he's giving them comfort before he decides to do whatever he's going to do to them.
Right. I didn't mention it, but he herds the kids into the bathroom before this goes on. I forgot to mention that. But ultimately, he does tie her up. He doesn't rape her, but he does strangle her to death with a cord, which is basically his MO. And he masturbates and leaves semen on her panties, which are later found next to her body. Now, one thing I did read is that he was going to kill the children. I think he stated that it was only because the telephone started ringing, and that threw him off and caused him to leave before he could kill the children.
Yeah, and I think she kind of told him that her husband or dad or somebody was due to call any minute, and if they didn't hear from her, they would worry and come over because of the kids. Right. So I think that shook them up.
True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp. Folks, therapy can feel like a big investment, but let's think about the state of your mind. It's just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save, on average, up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. And you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. I've used the BetterHelp service for years. And I love the fact that, I can connect with a therapist in a comfortable spot in my home on my laptop. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/TCAT today. to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TCATT. You know, even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. All right, well, let's play Rader's own words of the Shirley Vian murder.
As before, Vian was actually on that one, she was completely random. There was actually someone across from Dylan's was a potential target. It was called Project Green, I think. I had project numbers assigned to it. And that particular day, I drove to Dylan's, parked in the parking lot, watched this particular residence, and then got out of the car and walked over to it. It's probably the police report, the address. I don't remember the address now. Knocked, nobody answered it. So I was all keyed up, so I just started going through the neighborhood. I'd been through the neighborhood before. I kind of knew a little of the layout of the neighborhood. I've been through the back alleys, knew where some certain people live. While I was walking down Hydraulic, I met a young boy and asked him if he ID some pictures. Kind of was a rust, I guess, or roost, as you call it, and kind of feel it out. And saw where he went, and I went to another address and knocked on the door. Nobody opened the door, so I just noticed where he went and went to that house, and we went from there.
Now you call these projects, were these sexual fantasies also?
Potential hits. In my world, that's what I call them.
All right. So
They're
you
called
went,
projects, hits.
all right, and why did you have these potential hits? Was this to gratify some sexual interest? Or?
Yes, sir. I had a lot of them, so it's just if one didn't work out, I just moved to another one.
All right. So, as I'm to understand it, then on the 17th of March, 1977, you saw this little boy go into a residence, and you tried another residence.
Sir?
No one was there. You tried another residence. No one was there, so you went to the residence with the little boy.
Yeah. And I watched where he went.
What happened then?
After I tried this once residence, nobody came to the door. I went to this house where he went in, knocked on the door, and told him I was a private detective. Showed him a picture that I had just showed the boy, and asked him if they could ID the picture. And at that time, I had the gun here, and I just kind of forced myself in. I just walked in, just opened the door, walked in, and then pulled the pistol.
What gun? What pistol?
.357 Magnum.
So you only had one gun with you this time?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
I told Miss Vian that I had a problem with sexual fantasies, that I was going to tie her up, and that I might have to tie the kids up, and she would cooperate with me at that time. We went back. She was extremely nervous. I think she even smoked a cigarette, and we went back to one of the back areas of the porch, explained to her that I had done this before, and I think at that point in time, I think she was sick because she had a night robe on, and I think if I remember right, she had been sick, and I think she came out of the bedroom when I went in the house. So anyway, we went back to her bedroom, and I proceeded to tie the kids up, and they started crying and got real upset. So I said, "Oh, this is not going to work." So we moved them to the bathroom. She helped me, and then I tied the doors shut. We put some toys and blankets and odds and ends in there for the kids, make them as comfortable as we could. We tied one of the bathroom doors shut so they couldn't open it, and she went back and helped me shove the bed up. against the other bathroom door. And then I proceeded to tie her up. She got sick, threw up, got her a glass of water, comforted her a little bit, and then I went ahead and tied her up and then put a bag over her head and strangled her.
All right. Was this a plastic bag also?
Yes, sir. I think it was, but I could be wrong on that.
Okay, you put a
But
bag.
it was something. I'm sure it was a plastic bag, yeah.
You say you put a bag over her head and strangled her. What did you strangle her with?
I think on that I had tied her legs to the bedpost and worked up with the rope all the way up, and then what I had left over I looped over her neck.
All right, so you used this rope to strangle her.
Yes, I think it's the same one that I tied her body with.
All right, what happened then?
Well, the kids were really banging on the door, hollering, screaming, and then the telephone rang, and they had talked about earlier that the neighbor was going to check on them, so I cleaned everything up real quick like and got out of there, left, and went back into my car.
Now, when you say you cleaned everything
Well,
up,
I mean, put my stuff, I had a briefcase, whatever I had laying around, the ropes, tape, cords, I threw that in there, whatever, that I had that I brought in the house.
had you brought that to the bride residence also?
Now, there is I think there's some basic stuff, but I don't remember bringing total stuff like I did to some of the others.
Was this a kit that you had prepared
Yeah,
beforehand?
yes, I called my hit kit.
All right, sir. You left the Vian residence, and had you parked your vehicle near
Yeah,
there?
and it's still in the same parking lot there at Dillon's, at Hydraulic and what is that? Harry? Lincoln and Hydraulic.
I'm just fascinated by the way that he can recount things with such, I don't even know what the right word is, but his demeanor is just, it's just so cold, right? There's no emotion at all. But a couple of things I took away from this, Gibby, I wanted to see what you thought was, one thing, he states that this was unusual because Vian was not a project. This was random, and it was very unusual for his MO because he normally stalked victims for quite some period of time. He had been stalking somebody, but that didn't work out. So I think that's why the Vian murder happened the way that it did. Again, he talks about bringing his hit kit, and he talks about that basically all of this is designed to satisfy his sadistic sexual urges. The other thing and last thing that keeps coming up to me is this Dillon's. He's always parking his car. It's Dillon's.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. He mentions that a lot.
Yeah, maybe somebody from the Wichita area will write in to the show and tell us what Dillon's is. I don't know if it's a department store. So that part of the MO is the same, but the other part was very random, which was... So we've got to get moving, and we're going to get on to December of 1977. So it's about 9 months later. At this point, Rader is fixated on a 25-year-old woman named Nancy Fox. He's been stalking her from her workplace back to her residence, knows what her days are like. And so on the evening of December 8, he breaks into her duplex. He cuts her phone line, which is has been part of his MO in previous murders. He's in her house, and he's waiting for her to come home from her evening job, which is at a jewelry store. So again, this one's kind of like The Bright, where he breaks in, he's waiting for the woman to come back.
And this is the one that he actually went to her work a few times and checked her out and kind of stalked her at her work as well, which I thought was interesting.
Back to the comment that I made about Vian, that being so random. I mean, I don't think that he just normally saw people and followed them home. I mean, he did a lot of stalking of a bunch of different people, but when he locked in on somebody, I think he really did his homework. Nancy lived alone. She walks in the door. Apparently, the initial confrontation takes place in the kitchen. He's got the gun, brings the gun in his hit kit. Very similar to the other one. He states to Nancy that he has a sexual issue. He needs to tie her up, and he's going to rape her. So that, this is very similar to Vianne in that respect. Nancy apparently, makes a few snide comments, but she doesn't fight back. She's ordered into the bedroom, and Rader ties her to the bed after she takes her clothes off, and he undresses himself, which, as far as I know, I had not read that he had done that before. And maybe I'm wrong, Gib. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I never read where he was getting naked himself in these other encounters.
I think this was something new for him.
So he's undressed. He's got her tied to the bed. He's got her thinking that he's going to rape her. That's what he's told her. And it's at this point he tells her who he really is. And he tells her that he's the same person that killed the Oteros. And he strangles her to death with a ligature cord, some type of ligature. Again, he masturbates and he leaves semen on a nightgown that's ultimately found next to her body. Not much to this one. Very similar in some respects to Bright, and very similar in some respects to Vianne. The interesting thing about this one is the next day, as he's reporting to work at ADT, leaving the office in the company van, and Rader stops at a phone booth down the street. He calls the police dispatcher. He says what's on the following clip.
Yes, you will find a homicide at Suite 43 South Pershing, Nancy Fox.
A little hard to hear, but he basically says you'll find a homicide at Nancy's address, and then he gives her name, Nancy Fox. Again, the audio is not great, but I wanted to play it because to me it's very interesting to hear his voice. And now I'm going to go back to Zodiac, because this is, again, something that the Zodiac did. The Zodiac would kill somebody, drive some ways, and then make a phone call. So apparently Rader leaves the phone dangling, but police go to the residence that he says to go to. They find Nancy's body. What comes out of this is that call, that tape recording, eventually is played over and over on the Wichita media. But no one in Rader's life, not his coworkers, not his family, there's nobody that's able to recognize the voice, which I guess I don't blame him. That it was really hard to hear. It didn't sound to me exactly like the other clips that we've been playing. So
they play this clip in the recording from 1977. When did they play this clip? In 1979?
No, in 77. It's December, so maybe 77 into 78.
Okay.
Is what I'm assuming, unless you know something different. Because he does this the next day, so they've got...
Right, they got the tape. So, about around the time, it was around February of 78.
It was when they made it public?
Public, yeah.
Okay. Again, we have Rader's own words of what occurred during the Nancy Fox murder, so let's hear that.
Nancy Fox was another one of the projects. When I was trolling the area, I noticed her go in the house one night. Sometimes I would, anyway, I put her down as a potential victim.
Let me ask you one thing, Mr. Rader. You used that term when you were patrolling the area. What do you mean by that?
It's called stalking or trolling.
So you were not working in any form or fashion. You were just...
I don't know if you read much about serial killers, they go through what they call the different phases. That's one of the phases they go through as a trolling stage. You're looking for a victim at that time, and that you could be trolling for months or years. But once you lock in on a certain person, then you become stalking, and that might be several of them. But you really home in on that person. They basically become that's the victim, or that's what you want to do.
He said trolling with a T, not a trolling.
He did say trolling. I thought he said trolling.
Oh, okay.
All right.
No, I wasn't working, sir.
All right.
No, this was off my hours.
All right. So you basically identified Nancy Fox as one of your projects. What happened then?
At first, she was spotted, and then I did a little homework. I dropped by once to check the mailbox to see what her name was, found out where she worked, stopped by there once at Hillsburg, kind of sized her up. The more I knew about a person, the more I felt comfortable with it. So I did that a couple of times. And then I just selected a night, which was this particular night, to try it, and it worked out.
All right. Can you tell me what you did on the night of December 8th, 1977?
Now, about 2 or 3 blocks away, I parked my car and walked to that residence. Knocked at the door first to make sure, see if anybody was in there, because I knew she arrived home at a particular time from where she worked. Nobody answered the door, so I went around to the back of the house, cut the phone lines. I could tell that there wasn't anybody in the north apartment. Broke in and waited for her to come home in the kitchen.
All right. Did she come home?
Yes, she did.
What happened?
I confronted her, told her there I was had a problem, sexual problem, that I would have to tie her up and have sex with her. She was a little upset. We talked for a while. She smoked a cigarette. While we smoked a cigarette, I went through her purse, identifying some stuff. And she finally said, well, let's get this over with so I can go call the police. And I said, okay. And she said, can I go to the bathroom? And I said, yes. She went to the bathroom and I told her when she came out to make sure that she was undressed. And when she came out, I handcuffed her and I don't really remember whether... Sir?
You handcuffed her? You had a pair of handcuffs?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Well, anyway, I handcuffed her, had her lay on the bed, and then I tied her feet, and then I was also undressed to a certain degree, and then I got on top of her, and then I reached over, took either her feet were tied or not tied. But anyway, I think I had a belt. I took the belt and then strangled her with a belt at that time.
All right. After you had strangled her, what happened then?
Okay. After I strangled her with the belt, I took the belt off and retied that with pantyhose real tight, removed the handcuffs, and tied those with pantyhose. Can't remember the colors right now. I think I maybe retied her feet. What they had not already, they were probably already tied. Her feet were, and at that time masturbated, sir.
All right. Had you had sexual relations with her before?
No. I told her I was, but I did not.
So you masturbated, then what did you do?
Dressed and then went through the house, took some of her personal items and kind of cleaned the house up, went through it, checked everything, and then left.
You know, pretty interesting here, Gibby, because he goes into some good detail about his stalking and trolling, and really gives some flavor to that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely. He goes, like you said, talks about handcuffing her and then tying her feet and then using the belt and pantyhose. I mean, he just really very detailed about that night.
You know, my wife and I do a lot of shopping online, and we always use Rakuten. Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. We're talking fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Macy's, Nike, Sephora, Dyson, and Lowe's. And that's just to name a few. Pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cashback. Cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or Rakuten can send you a check. You can even maximize your savings by stacking cash back on top of other deals, like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It really is a no-brainer. Membership is free, and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cash back really adds up. Hey folks, see if you've ever had this problem. You're trying to eat a little healthier, but you're in the grocery store aisle, you're looking at packaging, nutrition labels, and they're so confusing, you don't know what's good for you and what's not. Well, this is why I love Thrive Market. my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered, and I don't even have to leave my couch. Finding better options for the whole family is easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. Just scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. This is how my wife and I found our new favorite snack, IQ bars. Sometimes I eat one in the morning with my coffee, sometimes just later on in between meals. They also have so many on-site filters that make it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in the family. Maybe you have someone who needs gluten-free food, somebody that has a peanut allergy. Well, no more scouring ingredient labels when you can just filter it all on Thrive Market. My wife and I often use the high protein filter to stock up on things like Sieti chips. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/TCATT, thrivemarket.com/TCAT. So in early 78, Gibbs, you had already talked about the fact that the recording of the call Rader made to the police has gone out to out through the media. And Rader sends a postcard with some type of poem to the Wichita Eagle, but when they receive it, they don't really recognize that it has any significance to it. That won't happen until sometime later. Postcards followed by a letter, though, that's taken very seriously, because in this letter, Rader takes full responsibility for the Otero murders, Shirley Vian, Nancy Fox, plus what he calls a seventh victim, which is later assumed to be Catherine Bright. But also in this letter, again, he talks about wanting to be called BTK. But the other significance of this letter is that it's the first time that Factor X is mentioned. Factor X will become this mysterious force, I think, that he'll talk about later on in life, that is behind the reason for his need to kill people. I mean, personally, I think it's just made up bullshit, but guys got a sexual, sadistic fantasy type urge, and he's just calling it Factor X. I mean, is there something else to it, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just another word for crazy.
Right. I mean, it's a mysterious sounding name.
Right.
Right. I think that's all it is. But the one thing that this letter does is it really forces the Wichita Police Department to make a decision. And that decision is whether or not, or how much information they're going to give out to the public. Ultimately, what they decide is that they're publicly going to announce that Wichita has an unknown serial killer on the loose, and that they're going to urge all citizens to be careful about locking doors. And you can imagine what kind of panic this creates. It basically, so this is what we said, 1978. This creates a whole generation of women growing up in that area looking over their shoulder. It was said that people were checking their dial tone on their phones every time they came home, because that was something that had been mentioned, part of his MO. It struck fear in the city of Wichita, and I would guess probably a much wider radius than that as well. So let's talk about the next victim, and that's Anna Williams. Did you want to say something, Mike?
Well, I did. I wanted to I found this interesting that, around this time, the chief goes on air, and this is the first time that they're trying a new way to try to reach out to BTK. The chief goes on the air, and this is the first time that they use, back then it was new, it was called subliminal imaging. And the chief and his forensics science experts, they shoot 2 frames, they splice it in, it has some words and an image. 30 years ago, this was a new science. And so they wanted to get that image burned into his brain, is what they were hoping for. And so what they did is they took the words "now call the chief," and right below it they put a picture of glasses that were upside down, and these were similar to the same sketch that he drew on the letter when he described the Nancy Fox murder. So they used this imagery to see if that would get him to call in and talk to the chief. Of course, it didn't. Like the chief said, back then it was thought that it had some credit and that it would work. And of course, 30 years later, now when he talks about it, he says, yeah, it was kind of ridiculous, but back then, they didn't know any better, and they thought that it would really work.
So what were they putting this out through the television station?
They were. They did a on-air TV segment, and it was about 40 seconds, and within 10 seconds into it, 10 or 15 seconds, they ran two quick frames while the chief was being interviewed. And of course, you have to slow it down 50 or 100 times. I can't remember how much they had to slow it down per frame, but
right, you can't see it with the naked eye, right?
Got it.
That's what makes it subliminal.
Right. So, but yeah, it actually says "now call the chief," and it's got the pair of the glasses upside down.
So I guess my one question about that is, why would that only get the Zodiac? Now I'm saying Zodiac. Damn it.
BTK.
Why would that only get BTK to call? Why wouldn't everybody sitting in their house say, hey, I need to call the chief? I don't know why I need to call the chief, but for some reason I do.
I got to call the chief about some glasses.
But it's an interesting story of something that they tried. At least they're they're trying. So I do want to tell this story about Anna Williams real quick. I know we've got to kind of hurry a little bit. So in April of 79, Rader breaks into the home of Anna Williams. She's 63 years old. Her husband had just died. He's basically playing the same game where he's breaking in. He's going to wait for Anna to come home. Obviously, he stalked her, for some time, but she never comes home. And so Rader, steals a few things and he leaves disappointed. In June, so, roughly a couple months later, Anna gets a package in the mail with a poem. And the title of the poem is, "Oh, Anna, Why Didn't You Appear?" And with it is a drawing of what Rader had intended to do to her and a few other things that he had taken from her house. And the next day, a very similar package arrives at the studios of the one of the local TV stations there in Wichita. But I thought that was a very interesting story. Anna's not she's a victim because she was so scared that she got the hell out of Wichita, as quick as she could, and I don't blame her. I would have too. The other interesting thing about this particular incident is that it's basically the last time that the police or the media would receive any type of communication from Rader for about 25 years. Which is, that's a long time. Now, there is one exception to that. There was a letter that was received in 1988 by the police, but they never officially acknowledged that it was from BTK. The letter basically claimed responsibility for some murders. I think it was three members of a family in Wichita. But it was signed BTK. And it wouldn't be until 2005 that the police would be able to prove that Rader had actually written that letter. Because, and I'm jumping forward a little bit, we all know how this ends, somewhat. But they find a copy of the original letter in his possession. So Rader would later state in comments that he didn't commit this crime, and I forget the name of the family. I know it starts with an F, but I don't have it written down. So he didn't commit the crime, but he admired the work of the man that did. Interesting, even though it's not one of the actual murder victims. We are going to get to another actual murder victim, but we've got to wait 6 years. So it's not until 1985. So again, we talked about he had a 3-year hiatus. Now he's got basically a 6-year hiatus. Again, why? We know that he's probably still trolling for victims, still stalking projects as he calls them. Why the such an extended period of time? The only thing that I could jot down, Gib, was that at this point, I think his kids were maybe around 6 and 9-ish. I could be off on the years. I was guesstimating on the math there.
So busy being a dad.
Yeah, busy being a dad. He's a husband. By all accounts, he's very active in his local church. He's got no criminal record at this time. He's still working at the ADT security company. So other than this being, he's a busy guy with a job and a family and young kids, I don't know what else the reason would be. I don't know how he holds off his Factor X, we'll call it, even though I think that's a bullshit name that he made up, but we'll call it Factor X. How is he holding that at bay for a 6-year period of time?
Yeah, I mean, what's satisfying his Factor X or his frog-like demon or his, right? I mean,
yeah, I got to get a picture of this frog-like demon as well. Now we come to Marine Hedge. So it's 6 years later. It's 1985. Marine Hedge is 53 years old. One of the things that, so he didn't kill Anna Williams, but he was trying to. She's 63. Marine Hedge is 53. And it does seem like, I don't know if he's picking older women at this point in time, or if it's just a coincidence that these two are a little bit older than some of the other victims. But Maureen is also a widow, and what's interesting about Maureen is that she's a neighbor.
yeah, she's just right down the street.
Yeah, same street, right down the street as the Raiders.
Kind of eerie.
She was described as a petite, friendly woman. She's got 4 grown children. I think her husband had recently passed. Rader and his wife Paula would sometimes take walks through the neighborhood, and they would wave to Maureen. So, I mean, they knew each other. Unlike my neighbors. I don't know any of my neighbors.
That's kind of stuff that's just eerie, man. And I'll tell you, at one point we were living up in Huber, and right across the street, catty corner from us, was a young family, and I remember, this day, we would talk to him or her, every now and then, you're out there cutting grass and stuff, and one day, I was talking to him, and he came home and cut the grass real fast after he was like a Pepsi or a beer route driver, and he came home and then he left after I talked to him after he finished cutting his grass, and then the next day we found out that he went and he murdered his wife and one of his kids, and that was just an eerie feeling because here's somebody that you didn't know real well, but you still said, hey, how you doing? Talked about the local events and sports and things like that, and then you find out that he went off and murdered family. And
well, you can say that you've talked to a murderer personally.
Yeah, actually too, right? Because I worked with a guy that we were business partners for a short period of time.
Hey, save some of these, man. We might want to make whole episodes out of these.
Yeah, you just never know. Never know.
The other thing that cracks me up with you is you're talking about Huber. You do realize we've been downloaded in like 25 countries in every state of the U.S., right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great place, man.
Right. But we're talking like, it's just our neighborhood. That's funny. So we're talking about Marine Hedge. Is this sloppiness, or is this because, one thing about Dennis Rader, he's a piece of shit, but to me, he does seem like a very detail-oriented person. I don't know if you got that or if you're thinking something else, Gibby, but to me, for him to pick somebody on the same street, that just doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't, but then it kind of does when you post murders, right? You listen to him speak because he talks about once he locks in, once he Factor X locks in on somebody, he can't let them go, and he has to follow it through. So I'm guessing Factor X locked in on her, and he had to follow through no matter what, which to the point when you dive into it in a minute, but I mean, he actually waited in the house for hours and hours and hours before he was able to make his move.
And I think you just made a great point, and it answered my question that even though I still think he's a very detailed person, I think you're right. I think he locks in and he fixates on a project. I'm using his terms. Once he makes that fixation, there's nothing going to stop him, right? I mean, it's like Oreo cookies. The minute I know that there's Oreo cookies in the pantry,
you got to eat them.
I'm going to get me an Oreo cookie.
Got to.
And I'll push down kids and everything to get to the pantry to get that Oreo cookie. Now I'm making jokes, and this is not a joking situation. Obviously, Maureen Hedge was murdered. We're going to talk about it here in a minute, but we can joke, but still have some sensitivity for the victims, which we do have for all these victims, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Let's get into this one a little bit, and then again, we will hear Rader talk about it in his own words. But so we'll maybe not go into every detail because he'll go into quite a bit. Like we said, they knew each other, lived on the same street. The one thing about this one is Rader, he was attending a Boy Scout camp outside of Wichita, and he used that. And maybe he had to do that because Maureen Hedge lived on his street. But so he's outside of Wichita. He leaves the camp. I assume he's there with his son. He's a Boy Scout leader. He leaves the camp in the evening, stating that he's got a headache and he's got to go into town to get something for this headache. He really kind of does this elaborate, very, very elaborate plan of parking his car in the city, and he buys some beer. And he doesn't drink the beer, but he's swishing it around in his mouth, and he's kind of spitting it out all over his clothes just so he would smell like he had been drinking. He calls a cab pretending to be drunk, and he has the driver take him to a park in Park City, and he tells the driver that he's going to walk it off. I got to walk it off before I go home. The wife's going to be mad at me. But the park backs up to the backyard of Maureen Hedges' property. Cuts the phone line. He pries open her door. Turns out on this one, he thinks she's home.
Right.
And
he does.
And maybe, is that what you're talking about, where he was waiting, or is he waiting after he gets in and finds out that nobody's home?
Yeah, I mean, he breaks in and he realizes she's not there, so he goes, he hides back in the bedroom. And then, of course, I'm sure as the audio will talk about us, she comes home with a male visitor for a while.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. This is the one where she comes home with a male friend.
Yeah, and he still waits and waits and waits until he leaves, and then, of course, he makes his move.
So the man leaves around, I don't know, sometime early morning, I guess. And that's when Rader, who's been hiding in the closet this whole time, he comes out of the closet, turns on the light, jumps on Maureen in the bed, and basically chokes her to death. I think this is the one where he actually physically choked her with his hands, if I remember.
Yeah. This is another new thing for him, right? I mean, now he's manually choking her, and also he does that where he takes his clothes off. Some new things.
Yeah, and there's he adds a bunch of new wrinkles to this one, and I don't know what fantasy this fulfilled, but he drags her her body out to the car, puts it in her own trunk, drives to his own church where he's supposedly I don't know what he is, a deacon or I know at some point he's elected president of the congregational something or other. He takes her to the church. He's very trusted because he has keys to the church. He takes her body down into the basement.
Yeah,
And
I mean, he sets her up with a bunch of bondage poses and takes pictures of that with his Polaroid camera. That I'm assuming that he'll use those Polaroids later up in his treehouse in his backyard.
I guess I just answered my own question, right? Where I said, what part of this fantasy does it play? The part it plays is in some of the other murders, he masturbates at the scene. In this one, he takes the body to another location, as you said, poses her in different types of bondage poses or whatever it is, takes photographs that he's going to use. And again, I'm doing air quotes. You can't see them. Use at a later date. And then basically he just finds a place in a ditch a few miles outside of Park City and dumps her body. And really, you know, it's not like he digs a ditch and covers it up or, you know, digs a big hole and covers her up. He just dumps her body.
Yeah, I think he just dumps it and puts some brush on top.
Yeah.
But again, here's a new twist to his project, right? I mean, this is another step in his project. So now he's taking the body off site, taking it to another site, and then putting it back in the trunk and driving it again to somewhere else to ditch it. I mean, he's raising the risk of being caught by doing this.
But does that also risk the fantasy?
Oh, absolutely. I think it adds to it. I think the excitement of that he might get caught just makes it all that more exciting for him.
Because there is a factor there, right? When you have anything like what Rader has, and again, I'm not speaking from knowledge, so I don't want anybody out there to think that. I assume that at some point the satisfaction from doing something similar, that has to start to wane. And so you've got to ratchet it up. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's tired of the same old, so he's going to take it to another level because the same old's not getting him off anymore. So
yeah, that's what I was trying to say. That's why I needed you to jump in and say the same old is not getting him off anymore.
that's right.
So he dumps her body. One thing I did have written in my notes is he left a knotted pair of pantyhose by the body, which he apparently had used for something. It never was elaborated. I had it in my notes because I thought it was strange. And then he dropped the car key on the dashboard and used a rock to smash a corner of the windshield to get the key back out because the key had slid down when he dropped it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Hey, that's actually happened to me before.
Did
But-
you? Oh, you
but I
mean
didn't
after you dumped the body under some trimmings?
Just the key slided down back in the day. So I could see his frustration, but I didn't break my windshield to get it out.
Oh, I thought you were really getting ready to let something loose there. And
That's a whole nother podcast.
all right. Maybe we'll do we'll save that for like a special milestone 100 episode. Gibby
There
tells
you
all.
go. That's right.
All right. So, you know, at this point it's getting late, and keep in mind he's got to get back to this damn Boy Scout camp. But he wipes Marine's car down for fingerprints, and he gets back to the camp. He was never connected to this crime until, we keep saying this, it's 20 years later. He's going to be connected to everything. Do that math, 85, 20 years later. It's 2005 when he's connected to everything. But still, he's getting away with all of this stuff. And what's interesting is that when he is caught, they do find those photographs that we talked about in his collection, the bondage posed photographs. Let's hear Rader talk about the murder of Maureen Hedge.
The others, she was chosen. I went through the different phases, stalking phase, and since she lived down the street from me, I could watch the coming and going quite easily. On that particular date, I had a other commitment. I came back from that commitment, parked my car over at Woodlawn and 21st Street at bowling alley there at that time. Before that, I dressed until I had some other clothes on. I changed clothes. I went to the bowling alley, went in there, the precincts of bowling, called a taxi. Had a taxi take me out to Park City. Had my kit with me. There's a bowling bag.
All right, that was Park City in Sedgwick County,
Yes, sir.
Kansas. All right, you had the taxi take you to Park City. What happened then?
There, I pretended that I was a little drunk. I just took some beer and forced it around my mouth, and the guy could probably smell the alcohol on me. Told him to let me out so I could get some fresh air, and I walked from where the taxi let me off over to her house.
All right, where does she live?
62, 42, 54, 62, 54, 62, 54,
What was
North
that?
Independence.
All right, when you walked over there, what happened next?
Well, as before, I was going to have sexual fantasies, so I brought my kit, and lo and behold, her car was there. I thought, gee, she's not supposed to be home. So I very carefully snuck into the house, kind of like a cat burglar, and after checking the house, she wasn't there. So about that time, the doors rattled, so I went back to one of the bedrooms and hid back there in one of the bedrooms. She came in with a male visitor. They were there for maybe an hour or so. He left. I waited till wee hours in the morning, and then proceeded to sneak into her bedroom and flip the lights on real quick, or I think the bathroom lights. I didn't want to flip her lights on, and she screamed, and I jumped on the bed and strangled her manually.
All right. Now, were you wearing any kind of disguise or mask at this time?
No.
You indicated this woman lived down the street from you. Did she know you?
Casually, we'd walk by and wave. She liked to work in her yard as well as I liked to work. It's just a neighborly type thing. It wasn't anything personal. I mean, just a neighbor.
All right, so she was in her bed when you turned on the lights in the bathroom?
Yeah, the bathroom, so I could get some light in there.
All right, what did you do then?
No, I manually strangled her when she started to scream.
So you used your hands?
Yes, sir.
And you strangled her? Did she die?
Yes.
All right, what did you do then?
After that, since I was in the sexual fantasy, I went ahead and stripped her, and probably went ahead and she was nude. I put her on a blanket, went through her purse, some personal items in the house, figured out how I was going to get her out of there. Eventually moved her to the trunk of the car. Took the car over to Christ Lutheran Church. This is with the older church, and took some pictures of her.
All right, you took some photographs of her. What kind of camera did you use?
Poor Lord.
Did you keep those photographs?
Yes, the police probably have them.
All right, what happened then?
That was it. She went through. I tied it. She was already dead, so I took pictures of her in different forms of bondage, and that's probably what got me in trouble was the bondage thing. So anyway, that's probably the main thing. But anyway, after that, I moved her back out to the car, and then we went east on 53rd.
All right, what occurred then?
Sir?
What happened then?
Trying to find a place to hide the body.
Did you find a place?
Yes, I did.
Where?
Couldn't tell you without looking at a map, but it was on 53rd, between Greenwich, maybe. What's the other one between Greenwich? Webb. I think between Webb and Greenwich, I found a ditch, a low place on the north side of the road, and hit her there.
All right, you say you hit her there.
Well, there were some trees, some brush, and I laid that over the top of her body.
So a couple things on that one. He laughed at one point, which I thought was kind of sickening, about it was the part about the address. Also, that audio seemed to have some issues with the volume going up and down, so I apologize for that. And the other thing that I found interesting was using the bowling bag as his hit kit.
I just still find it intriguing every time he talks. It's just like another day at the office. It's like he's around the water cooler with his coworkers, just telling them what happened over the weekend. Like it's just no big deal. Yeah, went out, raped and or murdered, strangled, masturbated on a dead body.
Took some pictures. Yeah.
Took some pictures. Went out, had some dinner, called it a night. I mean, he's just so unemotional about it.
Right, but that is a psychopath, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
He's incapable of any type of empathy or remorse, even though we're going to play some clips, later on, fake remorse, but he doesn't have, I mean, there's no way at any point in time, I don't think he felt bad about anything he did. I just don't think he has it it's not in his makeup. We've got a couple more murders, then we've got a lot more after that. So, we've got the arrest and sentencing and him more taunting of the police. So we got a third episode. We know that. The third episode is going to be very interesting because what I find interesting is the communication with and his taunting and going back and forth with the police after so many years.
Right.
Right. And I don't want to get into it now because, we're already, pretty far into this episode and got to cut it off. But I think the third episode is going to be very, very interesting from that fact alone.
Well, everybody just needs to make sure that they come back, download the third episode.
Right. So you hear one.
Because you don't want to miss it.
You hear two. You got to find out how it ends.
If you thought I had interesting facts today.
Plus,
Gibby's
liable to divulge some other
personal
secrets that
that's right.
May get him looked at by local PD. We don't know. We'll see.
Might mess up my witness protection plan, but so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for the support, the downloads, the interaction on social media. I want to see even more of it. Share, if you like this, share it with your friends. We're really trying to build something here. The other thing that I wanted to mention was I've really been racking my brain trying to come up with a cool name for our listeners or our what's the word, Gibby? What am I trying to say here? It's getting late and I'm losing it.
What do you want? You want a fan club?
Well, I mean, not like a teeny bopper Justin Bieber fan club, but
what's a bunch of murderettes or something?
Yeah. There's a name. I'm looking for a name. So what I'm asking everybody to do is send me the name. Whether it's a play on the words of the title of our show, something that we can use episode after episode to describe a term of endearment for our listeners. I guess I should put it that way. But if you want to make a Justin Bieber type fan club, I'm not going to stop you.
Clearly, they haven't seen your picture.
Yeah, exactly. But, you can see, if you get on Instagram, you can see one of my true crime dogs, Bodie, who you probably heard in the last episode walking around and shaking his ears. I left the door open to the basement studio and he got down. I couldn't get him out and I was doing the podcast at the same time. So I'm sure people are wondering what that was. So that's what it is. If you want to see who caused that, go to the show's Instagram and look for the big black lab, and that's who did it. Gibby, let's sign off. For Mike Ferguson and Gibby, good night, stay safe, and keep your own time ticking.
At Hotels.com, we know some travelers crave an ocean breeze. Others don't want to deal with sand. And oftentimes, those two people end up together. Compare properties side by side to find yourself poolside, oceanside, and still in a relationship. Find your perfect somewhere with Hotels.com.